Hello, you've reached Gloria with Farmstead Talk, and I am here today with Josh and Courtney of Foraging Farmers, and they are representing their state of Idaho in this homesteading interview today. Welcome, guys, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
it's a pleasure. So if you would, first let's go ahead and where can folks find you on social media?
So we are on Instagram. Our handle is @Foraging Farmers, and we also have a Facebook page, and it's the same handle @Foraging Farmers.
Okay.
And we also have our website, which is live now, not fully completed, but that's foragingfarmers.com.
Okay, great. So if you would share a little bit about yourselves, where you were born, a little bit of a breakdown, a little bio on each one of you.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and then in my mid-20s moved to Denver, Colorado, which is where I met Josh. And then we were in Flagstaff for a little bit and then ended up here in Teton Valley, where we really, really love it. We're able to have the, garden and our chickens, and we have adventure really close by all around us, really, and that's really what brought us here. So
Very nice.
yeah.
And I am from upstate New York originally, small little farm town. My mom had commercial greenhouses and a landscaping business. We had a small garden and whatnot, but for the most part, she just grew plant starts and I helped out there. Went to college in Pennsylvania, pursued a running career for about 5 years, moved to Colorado and got into more trail running and ultra running, but still had a garden wherever I went, and then met Courtney, and she's already explained the rest. And here we are in 3 years more in this
Over
location.
3 years, yeah.
Okay, so where exactly are you living, and what is the population in the field there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we are in Victor, Idaho, and for those who don't know where that is, so you have Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which a lot of people know where Grand Teton National Park is. That's essentially where we are, but we're on the west side of the Tetons. So you just go from Jackson Hole up and over Teton Pass, and we're right there at the border. So some people call this area Idaho, like Idaho and Wyoming combined. So yeah, Victor, Idaho, Teton Valley.
Yep. And then so for Teton County, Idaho, the population is about 10,000 around the 2015 census. And then Teton County, Wyoming is 23,000. So those are in terms of where we would, that's our market base. And then it's a huge tourist area based on the fact that we have the Tetons right here, ski resorts. It's the mountain lifestyle where people come to spend their summers and camp. And then we're also kind of like the entry gate to like Teton National Park, Great Teton National Park, and Yellowstone. And everyone drives straight through here. So the summers get a little crazy and winters are busy with the ski season.
Okay, so is it a wooded area, agricultural area?
The valleys are very open and agricultural. And there's a lot of like wheat crops and potatoes. It's Idaho. So it's like the valleys are very open, and then the mountains in this area are very forested. There's more scrub brush on south-facing hillsides, but thick pines. I'm not sure if you can see out the window behind us at all, but we're right up against the trees ourselves here, where the valley kind of opens up below us.
Okay. And on the property, how big is your property that you're living on?
It's a rented. We rent an apartment in a garage on our landlord's property. So our landlords have their house, and then it's an old garage that they have an apartment in. They also have a separate garage, and it's 2.5 acres is their property boundary. And so our chicken coop and stuff is on their property, and our garden is actually on our neighbor's property because our landlords want to have horses. So it's kind of a cobble, we throw it all together, work with the neighbors, and
we're
all
super
that.
grateful for them.
Hey, if it works, right?
Yeah.
It works, it gives you more space. So what is your growing zone out there, and what kind of gardening methods are you utilizing?
Yeah, so we are in zone 4B. We have harsh winters at times, although with climate change, it seems like they're getting milder and milder. We had one of our warmest Januaries on record, and I think
it's pretty warm today. It's 35.
Which this year we've only had a half a dozen or so days below zero. And then our growing methods are, we do like a no-till method. So our deep compost mulch, we don't own a tiller or anything. We sheet mulch with alfalfa and cardboard and compost to build our growing bed, and we use that as a weed suppression because our whole growing area is literally a giant quackgrass field. And if anyone is familiar with gardening, which I'm sure everyone knows what quackgrass is, it's if you till it, you're literally just multiplying it. So, so we chose to do a no-till method, both on the weed mitigation side of it, and also with the focus of regenerating soil and building soil and creating more of an ecosystem within the soil itself. And we've even inoculated with mushrooms and have composting worms that are both in the hoop house and outside in the greenhouse, and use our chicken compost and all that to really boost the nutrients of the soil.
Okay, so right now you have the in-ground garden, correct? And then
Yep.
you have some smaller raised beds, right? That are just
Yeah, so our current setup we have about 1/10 of an acre little mini market garden with a 16 by 24 hoop house as well. So it ends up being about 0.12 acres if I did the math on it. And then we have our chicken coop, which has some raised beds along it, but that's mostly just to create a border so that the neighboring dogs and whatnot aren't like getting their noses right in there against the chicken run. Which is fully enclosed. We wish we could free range, but we have a lot of animals and dogs running around being up against the national forest here. And this area is known for people's chicken coops to be raided by whether it's wolves or coyotes or, a lot of different things will completely demolish a coop. So we're, knock on wood, have not lost a single chicken to a predator.
Is the hoop house that you're utilizing, is it for basically starting and extending your season, or are you actually doing full season grows in there?
All of the above.
Okay.
So we do most of our starts in there. We actually have right up above us here in our kitchen, a 10 flat grow bed that I built right when we first moved in here for a lot of indoor seed starting for like tomatoes and stuff that need a little bit longer and a little bit more warmth. And then down in the hoop house right now, we have a hotbed that holds 8 flats and maybe even 10. And that actually it's full of seedlings right now that are sprouting, even with nights that are pushing 0 still right now. So it's just a compost bin with pallets on top of it. It's cranking at about 145 degrees internally. And that fired up about 3 weeks ago. And seed trays were put on there about 1 week ago, and then we also have in-ground growing in the greenhouse all winter long with overwintered crops. So we don't harvest a lot in December and January, but we're starting to pick up our harvest from our overwintered crops, and then interplanted some direct seeded stuff that's starting to sprout right now, and then the stuff on the hotbed will go in the greenhouse as other things start to bolt in the next month. So it's kind of a rotating throughout the winter and trying to maintain as much as we can. And then come spring and summer, it transitions more into tomatoes and summer crops. And we actually even grew ginger last year. We're experimenting with additional season extension and trying to grow more tropical type crops or root crops and things that no one would want to think you could grow in this valley. And
lemon trees.
Yeah, Courtney wants a lemon tree. I told her someday we will have a geothermal greenhouse with a lemon tree and year-round growth.
Yes, that would be exciting.
Yeah. So big ideas.
So what would you say is your biggest successes and challenges in the garden for your location?
Yeah, so
Bulls. I'm kidding.
yeah, no, that is a challenge. Yeah, you can talk about that one.
Yeah, I think that bulls are a big challenge for us,
through the winter.
Especially through the winter. In this summer, we don't seem to have quite as much of an issue, but we've definitely been battling some bulls this winter.
Yeah, bulls and pocket gophers, but we did find a trap that actually works well, a small live trap that will actually catch them. And we seem to have mostly eliminated them, and all the crops that they demolished that we didn't get to eat this winter are starting to regrow.
What kind of traps are you utilizing, and is it are you doing a relocation, or does it?
Being the type of animal that they are, like a vole, like they don't like the cold. So I set the traps, and by the time I go to work and come home, if they get in it, a lot of times they're already dead.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have caught mice and stuff and relocated them.
Yeah.
Courtney.
I take them down the road to the campgrounds. It's about 1.5 miles.
Yeah, Courtney's cat loves mice, as in like she's friends with
She's
all
friends
mice.
with them. She will bring them in and let them go inside the house and just watch them.
But yeah, so
Mice? The mice?
Yeah,
mice,
she's
yeah.
like
She
the
won't
friendliest
kill a
mouser. She
mouse.
doesn't kill them. She just brings them to us.
Yeah, and she watches them run away. She won't even play or chase them. Where the dog will actually catch a ball and kill it. But yeah, so a quick overview, a couple challenges. Location, where we are in the valley, we're against a north-facing slope, slightly north-facing grade. So the winters, when the sunlight is low against the trees here, even at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, down in the open area where our garden hoop house is, it's already in the shade where the rest of the valley sees sun until 5 o'clock. So we're losing in this time of year probably about 3 hours or almost 4 hours of actual sunlight per day compared to other parts of the valley. We do have good soil though, being up against the forest, so that benefits us. And we also have a little microclimate with the giraffe coming off the pass. So there's kind of pros and cons about this area. But then on top of that, in terms of what we want to do to make it more of a business and profitable business at that, our size constraints here make it a little tough, since we don't have access to the full property. We're maybe a 1/4 acre maximum we'll expand to this year, but so that's not quite enough to go full-time farming on it. And then there's our it's a jungle already. And then irrigation, we're located between 2 irrigation ditches, but we don't have rights to either one of them. So we use well water. Luckily this year we have 2 wells, 1 good well and 1 hard water well, which our landlords gave us to go ahead to utilize the hard water well as much as we want. Not ideal again, but it's better than not having enough water. Like we've had in the past.
So what are you doing with your crops now?
Yeah.
Are you growing mostly, I know you said that you have a business, so obviously you're selling somewhere. So tell me what that looks like.
Yeah, so right now during the winter, we're basically anything that we're getting out of the greenhouse, we're consuming ourselves and enjoying that. And so then, and we also have some squash up for storage, but during the summer and early fall, when things really start picking up, we sell locally. And that was this past summer, it was kind of experimental. We would just like include, like an extra bag of kale or mixed greens to people who would buy eggs just to see if they were interested. And of course that went pretty well. And so our plan this summer is to not only sell locally to friends and neighbors, but we're also going to be selling at the People's Market in Jackson Hole, which we're really excited about, which is, it's during the week. It starts at 4, I believe, on Wednesdays.
So being kind of in a secluded area, how are you doing your marketing? Or is it basically just word of mouth or?
Yeah, word of mouth
Social
goes
media.
so far. We do have social media. We could definitely be more active on it than we are, but I think more than anything, it's been, there was one initial post on the community page and then about eggs maybe 2 years ago, and it took off from there, and then it's just been word of mouth really, or coworkers.
Yeah.
So
And we actually have some good contacts, whether it's in our local restaurants, or a good friend of ours is the produce manager at the local organic food store. He's another runner that we run with once in a while. So he has been convincing us to grow certain things to sell at the Barrels and Bins Market in Driggs.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think also once we get into the farmers market, it'll expand a lot more from there.
What about crops at the end of the year? Are you participating in any food preservation?
Yeah, so we've got storage crops that we grow, like our squash, like Courtney said. We've got tons of garlic, dried, tons of potatoes, root crops, carrots, parsnips, all out in the gym here. It's kind of our root cellar in quotes, 'cause it's above ground.
And we do a lot of canning and pickling with beets and cucumbers to make pickles. And we also have cabbage that we like to make different slaws with.
A friend of ours is really into ferments, so we actually do some trades with him. We'll grow some stuff. He grows a lot of stuff as well, but we'll give him a ton of our crops that we have extra of, and he'll make kimchi and different slaws and whatnot. So we end up, I think we have like one left, so we've been eating it all winter.
Yeah. And then anything that's not quite up to par for human consumption, whether, there's like worms in the potatoes or something like that, which does happen. We have these amazing chickens who are able to eat it and process it and turn it into compost. And
Great. Well, let's talk about those chickens. So how many chickens do you have, and what kind of coop are you working with?
So we have 47 chickens, and 2 of those are roosters. One's a bantam rooster, one is a larger breed rooster. They're both pretty funny because their personalities are very different, but they're very essential to our flock because they keep the peace, they break up all the chick fights and things like that. Great protectors. All of our chickens have names. We don't eat our chickens once they slow in production. In our mind, they still contribute to the homesteading process by creating the compost. So once they're here with us, they're here forever. We don't eat them.
And part of it too is we purchased originally, and we keep adding to the flock for creating a rainbow eggs collection. So we add different breeds that add different colors or speckles, and we're kind of experimenting with breeding our own now. With the hope that when we do have a piece of property our own and we could scale up, we'll have the ability to just take all of our eggs, hatch them, and then have this rainbow unique flock just from that, and then add some more into that as well. And then the system itself is a whole composting system. So it was designed for the garden, actually, knowing that we were going to do a no-till garden. We needed a lot of compost and we needed that fertility. So we built that, started building compost inside chicken run, which has like a 14 by 16, 3-foot deep pit within it. It's 24 by 32 in dimension, 12 feet tall, fully enclosed, for the most part predator proof. And then we get material. We get material from our local friend's landscaping business for leaves. We get some mushroom blocks from a friend's mushroom grow system. We've included tons of wood chips, any brush that we have, any leaves we have. We pick up grain from the local brewery every week or two. So there's a lot of inputs that go into it, and then we add, scratch and full seed grain into the hot compost piles, and then the birds all through the winter get to scratch and compost and eat sprouts, and they don't see sun for a couple months, but they're still very happy and active and outside even when it's 0 degrees.
Okay. So when we're all done here, I'd like for you to take us out, and we'll take a quick tour of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then as far as predators, I guess we have had one issue, and we got pretty lucky, but because of our location, we did have a bear that tried to break into our coop multiple times and run. But luckily, Josh built a very bomber-proof chicken run, so we just had some repairs, but she wasn't able to get in. So
that's good. Yeah. Tell me about your foraging adventures and what you're finding and how you're utilizing that, the items you're finding.
Absolutely. So we have actually taken a wild foods foraging class a couple years ago, and there's a lot to forage for in this area. We primarily forage for mushrooms, chanterelles, morels. Occasionally we'll come across different oyster mushrooms. And then we also live in a great area to forage for nettles. We've eaten the nettles before and cooked them, which are delicious. And then we do the same with the mushrooms. And then we do sell to people who, make goods to sell at the farmer's market. They'll make like chanterelle quiche, or sell to local restaurants, but we mainly forage for mushrooms.
Nice.
Yeah. And then we also do some shed hunting as well, so we can include that in our foraging. I actually was out this morning for an hour just touring with the dog, looking for some early season antlers, which we chop up and use for dog chews, and we sell those as well.
Nice. Very nice. Where do you see the homestead in 5 years?
Oh gosh, we might be here for a while. I'm kidding. it's hard to say because even with what we have, like we just feel very fortunate and it's just so good here. But ideally we would have our own piece of property, perhaps 20 acres. And then I'll let Josh speak for the garden, but ideally, you know, we'd like to have more chickens. I personally want like a designer flock of chickens, of bantams. I don't know why, I just love bantam chickens so much. They're adorable. A cow, as far as animals go, potentially a goat, maybe for milk, because I personally have a hard time with cow dairy. And I event like maybe like the 7 to 8 year plan would be maybe a horse or two. So
yeah, and then, so Courtney and I feel have, you know, she has more the homesteading, growing the things for the house, having the animals for the house, whereas my side of it is more like I enjoy all of that, but I also, that's what I want to do career-wise. I want to make a living off of the homestead, off of a small farm, a profitable farm, and utilize it to expand and share and teach as well. So my focus is trying to find property that we could utilize to do all of that and get started sooner than later, and expand, I think just upscaling what we have here by about 6 once we do our expansion, which has, anyway, 6 times the chickens is 300 chickens, keeps it under the numbers for, you know.
Yeah.
It's good.
There's a lot that goes involved with it, but yeah, and doing it so that way it's manageable by the 2 of us and then maybe eventually one employee. But yeah, in terms of 5 years, I would love to have a piece of property that has a cabin or 2 on it, so that way we could have a place, we could either have a rental or an employee staying there as well, and then have a nice barn with a, you know, fully efficient automated chicken coop and whatnot there, with a processing area, greenhouses, season extension, and growing year round. It's one thing in this valley that all the farms tend to shut down for the most part in the winter. They might have some personal stuff, but you don't see any local produce at the winter markets. And knowing what we can grow here with our limited sunlight and limited space and limited size, I personally feel with a few tweaks and a few years of experimenting, we could have produce available year round at the local markets, which would be an amazing niche for Zone 4 in the Tetons.
Sounds really good.
Yeah.
Yep. Just takes a little planning, but you know,
big part.
Yeah, think positive. So
yeah.
Okay, getting ready to wrap up. If you can sum up in one word what your homesteading experience has meant to you thus far, what would that word be? And you can have one word per person, or not, or just
education. Yeah, educational for me. You learn so many different things and how to think creatively in a different way. You know, when your water's freezing or your chicken isn't doing well and it's late, and you know you live in an area where you don't have emergency vets, you really learn how to think on your feet and outside of the box. And sometimes you're put in situations where, okay, well, I guess we're practicing backyard chicken medicine today. And so you really, it's, educational and probably so many other words, but you learn a lot. And I've also learned that you kind of operate on homesteading time. Sometimes things come up and you don't even expect it.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
For me, it's just happiness or community. You know, I feel like this career, this lifestyle brings together every
Pick
little
one word, Josh.
One word. Yeah, I'm just trying to explain the one word.
Just one word.
Community, because it brings everybody together.
Oh, very nice.
And everything together. Yeah.
That's really, really nice. Okay, so you want to go ahead and take us out to the chicken coop?
Yeah, we'll do a quick walkthrough.
Yeah, let's do a quick walkthrough.
Yep. So here's our snowbanks. The greenhouse and hoop house are down below. You can walk out, just give you a view of that. And then here's our apartment.
Okay.
And then here's the chicken run, the chicken coop, and then we have this little hoop over it. And here's a raised bed that runs along it in the summertime.
Okay.
Our foraging sheds as an
antler
handle.
Great handle.
Big man door. This is my throw together winter, keep this giant pile of compost dry.
Okay.
Inside our compost, we actually are inoculating it with red wiggler composting worms for even year-round little worm farm kind of, but anything that gets out, the chickens can eat. Anything that stays in there, they add to the compost. We just kind of threw together some pallets quick in the winter, but this will all come down in the summertime. They've got little shady spots, and there's actually a tree in here, and our snow gets shoveled. This is the pit here, which is all, lots of compost, about 3 feet deep. It'll hold about 25 yards.
Okay, now Josh, wait, let me ask you a question. So that was built purposefully to put all the chicken waste in there for compost?
Yeah, so this is originally for the compost, which then the whole thing became a composting setup. But this we use for finishing compost. So on the entire outside area, and even where I'm standing is about a foot deep of good usable compost underneath here.
Okay.
But we will dump whole grain seed and all our new materials on this outside area, and then heap it up in a pile over in here, and some of it will kind of fluff out into the walking area, and then I'll slowly add material from that, shifting it into the pit, and then the birds will scratch that. And in this time of year, we throw a lot of stuff just direct into here, but in the summertime, a lot of the material gets moved into the pit to finish, and then this doesn't have any extra seed added to it, so the birds kind of get rid of any weed seed, any grain seed that we add to it, and then all the chicken manure each day gets added to the finishing pit, so that kind of, it's really inoculated with some good nitrogen. And then here's our big rooster Cash, and then our birds are all friendly for the most part.
This is great.
They're all different breeds. So then this here is just, it doesn't add warmth, it just allows them to have access to drier compost, a spot that if we do get a big snowstorm, they could still get outside. I try to shovel this first area out so that way they can go in and out. So that's why there's a pile of snow there, and then a pile of snow here. And then in between, I will add material on top of the snow so that way they can still get out and walk around and be active all through the winter. And so there's their chicken door there, which is an automatic door. It's got a little solar panel up top here, and it's been installed for almost 3 years now, 2.5 years. And these guys, we don't open or close the chicken coop each night. They just come in and out on their own.
That's nice.
And then so we have a door here. We call this the porch. Gosh, stop it. So right here, this soil compost mix stays dry all winter. This time of year when it's melting, it's starting to get a little bit wet, but this allows them to dust bathe and enjoy that and stay healthy all winter long. This has actually got plywood underneath it, but this is their food area. So we have power around out here with an extension cord. We have heated water. We have 2 butt jugs that we rotate every other day. We'll refill one of them. And then we have a gravity feeder that'll hold about 100 pounds of pelleted feed, which we only add one every 7 to 10 days. We'll add 1 bag. And then there goes a mouse actually outside. And then in the summertime, there's a 50-gallon water barrel that runs down to cup feeders that we fill once a month through the warmer months. And so we, for the most part, we every 7 to 10 days give them a bag of food, and every 4 weeks we refill their water. This time of year, every other day we will be filling their water, make sure it's not freezing. And then in here we do a deep litter almost like a deep litter composting setup, but it's just kind of like the wood shavings, but we fill it up almost about 2 feet at times throughout the year, and then we'll clean it out once a year, and that all goes out into the compost in the fall to start building for the next year. And then our nest boxes are underneath our dropping boards. The dropping boards catch all their evening feces, so we will scrape and get probably about 2 to 2.5 paint buckets full every day that goes direct to the compost. And then in the summertime when it's all dry, you can literally go out there and grab that compost, dig down into it, and it just smells earthy and it doesn't stink at all. So this gets changed once a year. Here's our little rooster, and this is our brooder setup under here. So underneath this back area, we have a 4 by 7 by 4 foot tall with a nest box and a little roost bar and a window. that we can separate if any birds have issues that need to be separated from the flock. And then we also will hatch our chicks or order chicks and place them in there with a broody hen that we will have sitting on unfertilized eggs at times, just so that she's ready for the chicks when they come. And they'll stay in there for about 2.5 to 3 weeks. And then at 3 weeks, we open it up and they're big enough to fly a little bit. And then the chicks are integrated with the flock already, and we don't have to do much work on that end. And it's fun seeing them out running around with the babies. And this is Bella. She's raised two batches for us right here. So she's our go-to mama hen.
What type of bird? What is she? Is she an Orpington?
She's a Favicania. Favicana? Yeah, Favicania. One of those designer breeds from My Pet Chicken. Yeah, the Martha Stewart chickens, Courtney says.
Okay then.
And then, so she's one of our birds that we hatched right here last year. And she lays a beautiful speckled green egg. So we've got multiple nest boxes. I don't see any eggs here. We have one egg. It's a white one. But yeah, so anyway, lots of different breeds and happy chickens, and the dogs are friendly with the birds.
Very nice setup there that you have.
Yeah, thank you. See, behind our house, this is the north-facing slope. There's all the trees right there. And the sun, we'll get a little bit of sun this time of year. You can see it's right there, just barely poking up and over. And then it'll track right behind these trees and poke through at times. But the chicken coop itself gets very little sun this time of year. Where we are, so Teton Pass is pretty much, if I get over here, it'll be easier to see. This tree's in the way. Ollie loves the greenhouse. So Teton Pass is straight that way by those mountains. You know, it comes off over there and it opens up. Right, what you can see is where it opens up into the valley, and then you can see the other side of the valley here, and then down below that way it just opens up to the rest of the valley. And then our landlord's house is there. This is where they're going to have their horses, and this is where we walk down to the garden. And our neighbor's house is our composting setup for outside. We also get coffee grounds and whatnot, and anything that comes from our house that the chickens can eat goes into this setup, so we can have 3 bays where that rotates. And it's a whole green trellis, so we're actually trying to grow hardy kiwis up the back side of it. Just a basic roll-up side hoop house. I've actually got it open with the sun today. This is the processing bench. It's buried, but we've got a wash station. We've got a double sink that drops in this gap here. We've got a 5-gallon salad spinner that goes right here next to that. And then we have a drying rack, packaging rack as well right here. We use EMT hoops to do some season extension and just cover with bug net or shade cloth or whatnot on some of the rows, depending on the crops. This was our original composting setup that hasn't been touched in over a year now. And we've got some benches out here to move seed trays to, or perennial trays to. And then we have perennial crops, and we plant sunflowers all around the hoop house. We've got tons of spring bulbs planted everywhere, raspberries.
What do you have on the flooring for the hoop house?
So right here, I work construction, so I save, depending on the day, if we have a material that we're using that is not going to be toxic, so just a basic, framing lumber. If we're doing a lot of sawing or ripping of boards, we end up with piles of like sawdust. So I save some of that in buckets. I always have buckets in my truck, and I can use them in some of the walkway areas inside the hoop house or the garden, or adding it to the compost or in the chicken coop. So that's just mainly in this area right here where I stand when I do a lot of the early season seeding and transplanting. And then in here, there's no heat. I'll be rigging a whole irrigation system this year. But I've got hoops that stay permanent on the rows in here. In the winter, it holds the row covers off the plants, so that way we can grow year round. And then in the summertime, I just grow the plants up, and we trellis tomatoes and cucumbers and all of that inside here off of these purlins. Can you get him out?
Sure, buddy. Hey, bud, come here.
And then, so we've got, already we've got chives sprouting here. We've got a lot of thyme and the different herbs growing in this area that don't really get covered. We've got, tons of different things. We got lavender and all that. And then underneath, we've these were all planted last fall. And so we've got arugula still growing, and we've had, -5 to -10, even last week, about 3 days in a row at night with highs in the teens. And we've been able to maintain a lot of the crops in here. And then underneath here, it's still pretty green.
Very nice.
Yeah, so
Good.
you got a lot of things that are sprouting in between that are hard to see right now. So you can even see all these little guys right there at the tip of my finger.
Yeah, I see 'em.
Just sprouting right now, but yeah, a lot of stuff that's full on growing still, and we're still harvesting from. And then more under that one, we've got asparagus that I grow from seed that I save. That is a second year crop that we might try to sell some of. We've got more that are started. This is the hotbed where we do a lot of our seed starting. So it's just a compost bin. And in here, you can see we've got peas for shoots that are sprouting. We've got beets coming up, a bunch of our lettuce and bok choy.
So you have active compost underneath this setup, is that correct?
Yeah, yep. So the 1st of February, I come out here, and I just have a few screws holding it together. So I take one side off completely, move it out of the way. And so the 1st of February, everything got a couple inches of fresh compost that had been sitting here aging for a year. And then in this bin here, we last year inoculated this with red wiggler composting worms, and they just multiplied. So actually our worms are now in there. Some are in the ground throughout the greenhouse. And then this got completely emptied and then refilled with, I just save all the chicken manure, alfalfa, coffee grounds, spent grain, pretty much whatever I can get a hold of that goes into the chicken coop, plus some of the somewhat finished chicken compost, and just layer it in here over the course of a couple weeks, because we'll start seeds around the 15th. So I spend 2 weeks just trying to build it up as much as possible, and as it settles, I add more and more. So I added more a couple days ago to this, and it's already settling a bunch, but I don't know if I could zoom in on here. I can't really can see what that temperature reads, but if I look in, it looks like it's reading about 148 or 150 degrees right now. And
Wonderful.
and usually you can see some steam rising in here as well. So I open it up during the day, and I'll have a couple water jugs that I'll bring down each night and have them sitting here. So that way they stay above freezing inside here, just with a couple of layers of agribon. And yeah,
what do you got growing in there?
Yeah, so we've got some early wonder beets that will grow for greens early season. So those will get planted in the greenhouse to add to our salad mixes. Peas for shoots, which will go in our salad mixes. And here's some more cilantro, which we don't really need, but I'm experimenting with different ways of growing cilantro. This is kind of a multi-sown plug cell that I would like to plant in spacing or even spacing, and be able to harvest a whole clump at a time to try to make a quicker harvest. Sweet peas, which are from Save Seed, that I will probably start another tray here soon as a backup, but we grow those for cut flowers, and they smell amazing, planted around the garden in the greenhouse. Here is more asparagus. So everything here is more of propagation for a long-term goal of having our own property. So I've been each year since we moved here, so this is the 4th year in a row now that I've started asparagus from seed. So I'll be finally harvesting some of the original stuff this year in the garden. Well, thank you very much for the time. And
yeah, thank you so much for participating in the interview. I really appreciate it.